Queen Camilla had spent months believing the position was already hers. The invitations had been discussed, the ceremonial arrangements quietly reviewed, and her place beside the king seemed unquestionable. Then, during a private palace briefing, a sealed folder was opened, and one sentence changed everything. Princess Anne, not Camilla, would become the crown's sole representative for the ancient order of royal guardians, a powerful ceremonial role the queen had privately claimed as hers alone. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Camilla did not move. She read the final line twice, then lowered the page with still fingers. The royal guardian of the crown was a ceremonial office revived to represent continuity at remembrance services, welcome foreign royals during the sovereign's absence, and stand beside him at constitutional observances. It carried no governing power, yet marked the clearest signs of royal trust. The Lord Chamberlain cleared his throat and delivered the decision. Anne had been appointed sole guardian, effective immediately. The princess would not share the office, rotate its duties, or divide its ceremonies with the queen. Camilla would attend the installation only as a seated family member. She asked whether the document was merely a draft. His answer came quietly. Charles had already signed it. Charles felt the accusation before she spoke. He sat across from his wife, knowing she had treated this role as proof that years of hostility had led somewhere. "You signed this without speaking to me?" Camilla asked. The king turned toward the window. He offered no denial, and that silence wounded her more deeply than the announcement. The folder held another blow. A confidential panel had studied Anne's service, ceremonial experience, public standing, and private guidance left by the late queen for 6 weeks. Several people had known the decision was moving against Camilla, while she reviewed speeches and seating plans as though the honor were settled. Anne had learned the truth the previous evening at St. James's Palace, a royal residence used for official family business. She accepted without celebration and asked that Camilla be informed privately before the announcement. That restraint should have softened the moment. Instead, it sharpened the humiliation. The princess had protected her dignity while still taking the place she believed was hers. Camilla rose and pushed her chair back with controlled force. She asked who first suggested that Anne, rather than the sovereign's wife, should hold the role alone. No one answered. As she left the unsigned acknowledgement on the table, the struggle shifted toward the buried history that made both women believe the crown had already chosen them. The appointment did not merely separate Princess Anne from Queen Camilla in ceremonial rank. It exposed the private belief each woman carried about her place inside the monarchy. One had been born into royal duty and spent a lifetime refusing praise. The other had fought through scandal, rejection, and decades of public hostility to stand beside the king. Now a single title forced them to confront a painful question. Was royal trust earned through sacrifice, survival, or blood? Anne had never expected royal life to comfort her. From youth, the princess accepted punishing schedules, difficult tours, and thankless responsibilities without asking whether anyone noticed. The revived guardian role suited that instinct because it rewarded endurance, memory, and service rather than charm. It asked its holder to protect continuity, not collect applause, and Anne understood that difference with almost brutal clarity. Camilla carried a different history into the same decision. The queen had survived public disgrace, relentless judgment, and years of being treated as though her place beside Charles could never be fully secure. To her, the appointment was not another duty. It was proof that the institution finally considered her essential, rather than merely accepted. Camilla returned to her sitting room and removed the brooch chosen for the ceremony she believed was hers. She placed it inside its case, then admitted to her longtime dresser that her remarks had already been written. Her voice held until one sentence escaped. "I thought this was the moment they stopped measuring me against the past." The queen closed the lid, but the shame remained open. Anne felt no victory at St. James's Palace. She studied the formal warrant, the signed document confirming a royal appointment, and told her private secretary that the decision would look like a public rebuke to Camilla. The princess had never requested the honor, yet accepting it placed her directly inside Charles's marriage. The records deepened that unease. Camilla's office had requested briefing papers, ceremonial designs, precedence plans, and guidance on which family heirloom she might wear. Her confidence had seemed so complete that courtiers assumed a private promise existed. Anne had seen those requests during the review and asked that they be excluded from the final recommendation, refusing to let the appointment become punishment. Then Charles received 2 handwritten notes. Anne offered to step aside if the role damaged the crown. Camilla asked whether he had ever intended to support her. For him, either reply risked betraying a woman whose loyalty had shaped his reign completely. Before Charles can answer either woman, palace officials reopened the incident that transformed a quiet competition into an irreversible decision, and revealed the precise moment Camilla's claim began to collapse. 6 weeks before the announcement, no one inside the palace believed the guardian appointment would cause a crisis. Camilla's name appeared on preliminary schedules, Anne remained outwardly indifferent, and Charles assumed the matter could be settled without confrontation. Then came the Windsor Remembrance Council, a private ceremonial rehearsal that should have lasted 20 minutes. Instead, one sentence spoken before senior aides changed the direction of the review and became the moment everyone later identified as the point of no return. Charles had revived the guardian role because palace planners believed one senior royal must represent the sovereign during periods of absence. The office demanded command of military tradition, constitutional neutrality, and enough confidence to act without appearing to rival the monarch. Marriage alone could not secure it, yet Camilla's position as queen made her office assume the choice was settled. Camilla allowed those preparations to grow because Charles never stopped them. Preliminary schedules carried her name, advisors discussed ceremony details, and staff treated her candidacy as the natural outcome. The king had never issued a formal promise, but the difference between expectation and commitment remained invisible until the Windsor Remembrance Council forced everyone to confront it. Anne broke the calm by asking whether the guardian should attend a military memorial in Charles's place. Before her brother could answer, Camilla closed the briefing folder and said, "There is no need to discuss alternatives. The role belongs to the queen." Silence followed. The princess did not argue, but officials around them understood that something had shifted. Anne asked Charles to meet privately afterward, in the library beside the council chamber. She told him she did not oppose Camilla receiving honors, yet she could not support a duty being treated as personal property before any final decision. The king defended his wife, reminding his sister how much rejection she had endured. Anne answered without softening the blow. Pain might deserve compassion, but duty could not be awarded as compensation. The council secretary had recorded every exchange in the official minutes, the formal written account of what was said and decided. When the selection panel reviewed Camilla's claim, members questioned whether she saw the role as service or validation. Archivists then produced a memorandum from Elizabeth, warning that no representative should confuse closeness to the sovereign with personal entitlement. Camilla later studied the selection file and found the final betrayal. The Windsor minutes had entered the review through the king's private office. Charles, not Anne, had authorized the panel to examine the sentence that destroyed her candidacy. With the past now exposed and her husband's role impossible to deny, Camilla demands the one conversation Charles had spent 6 weeks trying to avoid. There were no advisors, no secretaries, and no ceremonial courtesies when Queen Camilla entered the king's private study that evening. Charles was standing beside his desk with both of her handwritten notes before him. She closed the door herself, turned the key, and asked one question without raising her voice. "Did you choose Anne because she was right, or because you were afraid to defend me?" What followed was not a royal discussion, it was a marriage confronting its deepest insecurity. Charles had dismissed all staff before she arrived. The guardian warrant, the signed document confirming the appointment, lay beside the official minutes from Windsor. Camilla saw the evidence arranged in front of him and understood that protocol could no longer protect him. She had not come to question the monarch. She had come to confront the husband who allowed her certainty to grow while privately doubting whether she deserved the role. Charles told her the panel had been unanimous. Anne's military standing, decades of service, and command of ceremony had made the princess the strongest choice. He could have rejected that advice, but doing so would have turned the office into a gift from a husband to his wife, rather than a duty earned through service. Camilla's restraint broke. She reminded him of the years of humiliation she had endured because he promised they would face the institution together. Losing the appointment hurt, but his silence cut deeper. He had watched her prepare remarks, review plans, and believed the future had finally opened to her. "Why did you not warn me after Windsor?" she demanded. Charles admitted the truth. He feared she would hear concern as rejection. He reached for her hand, but Camilla stepped away. Then he said the words she had dreaded. "You began speaking as though the crown owed you something." The queen turned from him, realizing the judgment had never belonged only to courtiers. Anger replaced shock. Camilla demanded that he delay the announcement and persuade Anne to refuse. Charles rejected the demand. The warrant was signed, the staff had been informed, and reversing the choice to protect her pride would weaken the monarchy and expose their marriage. A knock interrupted them. Charles revealed that Anne was waiting outside, alone and without advisors. She had offered to return the warrant if Camilla could present a constitutional reason. Camilla unlocked the door, but did not leave. She ordered Charles to bring his sister inside. When Anne enters and places the appointment warrant between them, every layer of ceremony disappears, leaving only blood, marriage, sacrifice, and one role neither woman can discuss without exposing what she truly wants from the crown. Princess Anne did not enter the study as a victor. She entered carrying the document that had humiliated the queen, placed it flat on the king's desk, and remained standing. Camilla expected satisfaction, perhaps even a trace of vindication. Instead, Anne offered her the one thing no one else had, a genuine chance to challenge the decision. But the terms were merciless. The argument had to be about the crown, not Camilla's pain, position, or marriage. Anne spoke first. "The royal guardian," she said, "was never created to elevate its holder. The office existed to steady the monarchy when family feeling, public sympathy, or private loyalty threatened judgment. Its holder had to disappear behind the duty, not use it to prove personal worth." Camilla answered with controlled fury. She reminded the princess that disappearing behind duty was easier for someone born with a title, protection, and an unquestioned place in the family. She had fought for every inch of acceptance. Every gesture had been judged. Every silence had been twisted. For years, survival itself had felt like service. Anne did not deny that suffering. She acknowledged the cruelty Camilla had endured, then delivered the sentence Charles had feared. "What happened to you may deserve compassion, but it cannot purchase authority." The king lowered his eyes. The queen gripped the back of a chair, wounded by the possibility that the words were true. Then Anne revealed the structure behind the choice. The Lord Chamberlain, the senior official who manages royal ceremonies, had reviewed the appointment with the sovereign's private secretary, 2 military advisors, and the keeper of the royal archives, the official responsible for historic royal records. Each had recommended her separately. Charles held final power, yet the judgment had never belonged to one person alone. The deeper shock followed. A shared appointment had once been proposed. Camilla would lead cultural and diplomatic ceremonies, while Anne handled military and remembrance duties. But the Windsor Statement changed everything. Officials feared the Queen would treat any division as an insult rather than a partnership. Charles had personally rejected the compromise. He believed a shared office would turn every appearance into a comparison, and every success into another wound. Neither woman had defeated the other. The king had chosen one guardian to protect the institution, knowing the decision could damage his marriage. Anne pushed the warrant toward Camilla. She would resign, she said, if the queen could explain how that resignation served the crown. Silence followed. Camilla does not tear the warrant or demand Anne's withdrawal, but the choice she makes next sends an immediate shock through the palace and begins the public collapse of everything her office had prepared. By sunrise, the palace was quietly dismantling a ceremony that officially had never existed. A speech was removed from Camilla's red box. A specially commissioned emblem disappeared from the jeweler's schedule. Her name was deleted from the order of service and replaced by Anne's. Each change was administrative, almost silent, yet together, they erased a future the queen had already begun to inhabit. For Camilla, losing the role now became more painful than hearing the decision itself. Camilla finally broke the silence in the study. She told Anne she would not ask her to resign because she could offer no constitutional reason, and she refused to invent one merely to protect her pride. The queen did not congratulate the princess. She simply left, wounded but controlled, and that single refusal to sabotage the appointment kept a private humiliation from becoming an immediate royal crisis. The palace moved faster than either woman could emotionally follow. Departments received the signed warrant, the formal document confirming Anne's appointment, while her office was sent security briefings, ceremonial schedules, and installation plans. Camilla's staff were ordered to return draft speeches and destroy duplicate seating charts. In hours, the monarchy had converted one painful conversation into official reality. Camilla felt the loss deepen when her private secretary brought the revised program. The old copy carried her name, the new one named Anne. She traced the printed line with one finger, asked everyone to leave, and folded the abandoned program instead of throwing it away. That small act revealed what she could not say. Part of her still could not release the future she had imagined. Anne felt the weight of that replacement during her first briefing. Several folders still bore the Queen's name. The princess ordered staff not to discard the work and asked that every useful preparation be retained. She understood that each detail transferred to her would feel to Camilla like another possession being removed. Then the Queen withdrew from the announcement to senior household members. Charles received the message at breakfast, set down his cup, and asked whether she intended to miss the installation as well. No answer came. Anne later sent a handwritten note. "I will carry the duty, not your humiliation." Camilla read it 3 times and placed it beside the brooch she had planned to wear. Charles finally walked to her rooms alone, dismissed the equerry, and entered without papers or excuses. He knew what he must ask. The conflict has reached the point where no committee, warrant, or royal office can resolve it. Only an unguarded conversation between two people who have spent decades defending each other can determine what remains of their trust. Charles entered expecting anger and found something more unsettling. Camilla sitting alone beside the unopened case containing the brooch she had chosen for her imagined triumph. There were no staff members to witness her pain, and no palace language left to soften it. The king did not defend the panel or explain the crown. He simply admitted that he had failed her as a husband, even if he believed he had acted correctly as sovereign. That distinction finally changed the conversation. Charles told her Anne's appointment had been the right choice, but the way he delivered it had been cowardly. He had feared confrontation, hidden behind procedure, and allowed a briefing to carry words he should have spoken himself. The king did not ask for approval. He accepted blame. Camilla answered with equal honesty. No one had formally promised her the role. She had turned informal discussions into certainty because she needed the office to mean acceptance. If the queen could still be passed over, she wondered whether the monarchy would ever see her as secure rather than temporary. Charles moved beside her chair and lowered himself until they spoke without rank between them. Camilla said the loss mattered less than learning he believed she had confused love with entitlement. He replied that he had never doubted her devotion. He had only feared what one title had come to represent. Camilla opened the brooch case. She would wear it at Anne's installation, she said, not as guardian but as queen. The choice was not surrender, it was discipline. She would not allow disappointment to weaken Charles, or turn a constitutional ceremony into a display of resentment. Then she asked for 10 private minutes with Anne before the ceremony, without aides, papers, or witnesses. Camilla wanted no apology. She needed to know whether the princess saw her as a danger to the crown or as someone capable of correcting a mistake. Anne met her in an antechamber. Camilla spoke first. "I thought surviving the journey entitled me to choose the destination." Anne answered that survival had earned respect, but duty would always decide the destination. The queen extended her hand and promised to stand for the appointment. The princess accepted without triumph and vowed never to use the office against her. When the doors opened, they emerged together. Courtiers expecting hostility saw Camilla walking half a step behind Anne, composed and deliberate. Within minutes, the image reached the press. What began as a private wound now belongs to the public. And one photograph outside the palace will determine whether Camilla's defeat is remembered as humiliation or as the moment she finally mastered the meaning of royal duty. The public did not see the locked study, the abandoned speech, or the folded program hidden in Camilla's room. They saw one image: Princess Anne stepping onto the palace forecourt wearing the guardian insignia, while Queen Camilla paused behind her and gently adjusted the ceremonial sash that had slipped at Anne's shoulder. The gesture lasted seconds, yet by midday it had become the defining picture of the appointment, and the moment that altered how the country understood both women. Buckingham Palace confirmed the decision in a formal statement naming Anne sole royal guardian of the crown. The revived office carried ceremonial responsibility, meaning its holder represented continuity at selected state and remembrance events, without gaining political power. The announcement praised her lifetime of service and stated that Charles had approved the choice after a structured review. Camilla appeared only among the senior royals attending. Broadcasters seized on the contrast. Many had expected the Queen to receive the role, and commentators immediately asked whether Anne's appointment marked a return to service-based recognition or a limit on the consort's ceremonial reach. Some framed it as a boundary between the sovereign's family and his marriage. Others called it the strongest test of Camilla's composure since entering royal life. Camilla faced that test the moment she arrived. A reporter shouted, "Are you disappointed, Your Majesty?" She did not answer, though her expression tightened. Then she saw Anne waiting near the entrance. Instead of passing her, the Queen moved toward the princess and entered beside her. Anne later broke from her prepared remarks. She thanked Camilla for supporting the ceremony with generosity under difficult circumstances. The Queen lowered her eyes. Charles, watching from the front row, understood that both women were protecting the institution he had endangered through silence. The next morning, a national newspaper placed the sash-adjusting photograph across its front page, beneath the headline, "The Duty She Lost, and the Dignity She Kept." Suddenly, Camilla was no longer portrayed only as the woman denied the role. She became the woman who refused to damage the monarchy because of that denial. Visitors gathered at Buckingham Palace carrying copies of the paper. One woman left 2 bouquets at the gates, one marked, "For Anne's service," the other, "For Camilla's strength." Yet public approval could not erase the abandoned speech, the unused emblem, or the belief Camilla had tied to the office. The applause had changed the story, but only her next choice could change its meaning. After the crowds leave and the headlines begin to fade, Camilla returns to the objects of her abandoned ambition and makes one final decision that closes the conflict for herself, for Anne, and for the reign.